How are you going to be as a human being? I mean, ultimately, our destiny is who do we become as people, and what do you do? What do you contribute? That's what it's about. That's what gives us a sense of fulfillment. A life of significance is one of growth and contribution. It's one where you decide what your life's about. Simply, what are you here for? Are you here to live, to learn, to grow, to share, to love? What are you here for? I'm asking these questions. I'm hoping you're thinking, not just listening to me. What is the special plan for you? You've got to discover the purpose of your life. There is a plan. There's something here for you that's different and unique than anybody else in the world, and you've got to discover what it is. And the best way to discover is just trust your instinct and say, what is it? If it was simple, it was clear, and I was living every day, why am I here? Because if you never discover your purpose, how can you ever win the game of life? How can you really enjoy it thoroughly? See, I look around at people so often, they're so unhappy, and I think the reason is that they don't ever win the game of life. It's a game they feel like they can't win, like they're always losing. And the reason, number one, is, I think there's 7 reasons. I'll give you 7. I've jotted some down here. I think number one is, I think most people never win the game of life. They never feel fulfilled. They never feel joy because they don't know the purpose of the game. If you don't know the purpose of the game, what's your chances of ever winning? Of ever getting to ring the bell and feel that sense of fulfillment or joy or passion or love or whatever it is that you truly want at the deepest level? See, if you don't know the purpose of the game, if you don't know the goal, it's pretty hard to set up your game to win, isn't it? Pretty soon you start pursuing things that don't give you fulfillment. You live in somebody else's life other than your own. You got to know, what are you doing it all for? What do you really want? When I ask most people this question, what do you want? They give me answers like, well, I know what I don't want. I don't want to live this way anymore. I don't want to feel like hell anymore. That's not going to give you what you want. What do you really want? Oh, I want to finally be financially secure so I can retire. Great. You know the statistics about retirement? Actuary statistics from insurance companies show that 3 years after a man retires, specifically I'm using men, guess what happens? He dies. To retire is to die. And for some people, this is like their major aim. Think about it. Retirement is going to make you happy. I thought when I was 21 years old, I'd make enough money so I could retire. That was my whole goal. Be financially independent by the time I'm 21. I pulled it off, and I didn't work for a good 6 months. Just went to the office, and I felt useless and worthless. I wasn't doing anything. I got to tell you, I loved the first month or two. But after a while, I was watching television, and I was putting myself in a position where I really ate like crazy. You know, I just couldn't find anything that was worthwhile. I didn't enjoy things. I was frustrated. I was angry because there was no purpose. There was no direction. There was no goal. You got to have a purpose. You got to know what it is. You got to decide what it is, at least for now, and know that that vision will continue to expand. Second reason why most people fail at the game called life, because even though they don't know the purpose of the game, they got tons of rules about how it must be played. Right? They don't even know the goal, and they got all these rules they got to live by. And not only do they have rules for themselves, but they have rules for everybody else around them. Rules for how their spouse should be. Rules about how their boss should be. Rules for how people they don't even know on the street should be. You know, it's so often in life we get upset with other people, and it's not about the other people, it's about our rules. They're doing something we know they shouldn't be doing, or they're not doing something we know they should be doing. Right? We need to just relax a little bit. We need to realize that whatever people are doing, they got a reason. It may not be a very intelligent reason by our perspective, but who are we to say? And you know what? And maybe it isn't an intelligent reason by lots of people's ideas, but you know what? It is a reason. I mean, it all comes down to how do we wire ourselves as human beings. There was a lady that pulled out all of her hair and has been pulling it out for years. And no one could figure out why. Well, it wasn't too hard to figure out why. All you had to do is dig a little bit. We know it's because she actually thinks that by pulling out her hair, what's the organizing principle? Everything we do to avoid pain or to gain pleasure. You go, Tony, pulling out your hair is painful. Yes, but sometimes we take a lesser pain in order to avoid a bigger pain, a more intense pain. The ultimate example of that, of course, is people try to commit suicide. Someone's trying to commit suicide, that's awful painful. But they're doing it because they think that if they die, they'll finally be out of pain. And the bottom line is most people wouldn't take the chance because they say, you know what, on the other side, I wonder what happens to somebody who commits suicide. Maybe there's eternal pain. They don't even consider it, most people, fortunately. But the point of the matter is real simple. This woman was pulling her hair out. You know why? Because she'd been sexually attacked on several different occasions. So somehow her brain couldn't figure out how to deal with it. She couldn't figure out why it was happening to her. So she finally figured out if she make herself ugly, then she wouldn't be attacked. And so subconsciously, she started pulling out her hair so that she would look as scary and ugly as you could possibly imagine. But then the problem was, at the same time, she still wanted to be close to people, and it was offending other people around her, so she'd wear a wig at times, and then the problem happened again when she's wearing a wig. So then she kept pulling her hair out, though, because she was also being physically abused at home by her father. Not sexually, but physically. So by pulling her hair out, it scared the hell out of him. He thought, oh my God, she's going crazy. And so he left her alone. So she kept doing it, even though it didn't keep the sexual situation away, at least it kept him away. Weird things that we do to ourselves as human beings. We come up with weird stuff. But you know what? It seemed to work, and if it seems to work, we keep on doing it, even if there's a better way. See, whenever you see somebody, you think they're doing something crazy, have some compassion. Are there any stupid things you've ever done in your lifetime? Or crazy? I would hallucinate based on my own personal experience. The answer may be, you betcha. And the bottom line is, we got to understand that things are going on that we don't understand with people. I remember one time I was talking to Stephen Covey about times where we misinterpreted people's behavior, and he told me about this time when he got on a subway, and this man walked in and brought on a bunch of his kids, and they were just running rampant, screaming, yelling, making noise, creating havoc. And, you know, Stephen's more of a mellow, centered kind of guy. He doesn't like that kind of environment, even on the subway. And the bottom line is, you know, he didn't want to say anything, but he found himself getting more and more irritated. And the man seemed to be just ignoring the kids, like it didn't even matter what they were doing. So he found himself finally to the point where he actually spoke up. So Stephen turned to him and said, you know, do you think you might want to do something about these children? And the man looked at him and said, oh, yeah, I guess I should, huh? He said, we just got back from the hospital. Their mother just died. He said, I just don't think they know how to deal with it. He said, quite honestly, neither do I. Stephen said he felt like absolute garbage. And he said it made him from then on realize whatever's going on, there may be something else going on as well. It made him have compassion. It gave him fewer rules for other people in his life. Not a bad idea. But we were talking about people that don't succeed in life, and why don't they succeed? One, they don't know the purpose of the game. Two, they got tons of rules even though they don't have the purpose. How'd you like to be in a game, and you're trying to win, and you don't know the goal, and you got a zillion rules you got to live by? That'd be pretty frustrating, wouldn't it? Well, add step 3 to it. Here's the third reason people fail to win the game of life, and that is because their rules are in conflict. They got rules like, he who hesitates is lost, and look before you leap. Right? Tell me how you work those things out. And that's the metaphorical humorous example. We've got all these different special rules where we contradict ourselves, where in one situation you're supposed to be one way, in another situation you're supposed to be totally different in order to be effective. See, if you've got a bunch of rules in conflict, which most of us do, you're going to have pain. You're going to have frustrations in your life. Here's the fourth reason why most people don't win the game of life. Because even when the person plays by the rules, they don't always win. In other words, you do everything right, you don't always get rewarded. You give your all. You put your heart and soul on the line. You do everything right, and still sometimes it rains on your parade. Sometimes, you know, a storm comes down and beats the death out of your crop. All of a sudden, you're in the Midwest, and the flood comes and destroys all you've worked on. You know, that kind of messes your brain a little bit. You start saying, hey, you know, why even try? There's no meaning to this. Everything I do is for naught. That's worthless. Not realizing there's a deeper meaning. There's a meaning beyond the moment. That what's happening in this life right now, this event you can't control, whether it's the loss of a father as Becky has gone through and a father-in-law as I have, or the loss of a business or anything that seems to be a loss, is a gain if you ask yourself, how can I use this? What else can this mean? If I can't use it today, how will I use this someday? How can I turn this into opportunity? How can I make myself more? How can I use this pain to sculpt my soul? What can I do right now to move myself forward? These are the kinds of questions that will support you instead of woe is me, why this have to happen? You'll never get an answer to those. Those questions will leave you in an endless loop. But the reason people fail in life is sometimes they do all the right things and they still don't get what they want in the short term. So they say, why even try? Here's the fifth reason why most people fail in the game called life. Sometimes you break the rules and you win. Oh my gosh. You do something you know isn't right. You do something you know you shouldn't do, something that's against your own values, against your own way of doing things, and you get pleasure. And your brain goes, hey, maybe there's some new rules out here. Maybe I don't have to live by these rules. After all, when I worked my butt off and did everything right and held myself to this high standard, I got pain, I break the rule, and I got pleasure. Maybe this is how it's really wired. Maybe I ought to just take a look at life being this way. You know what it does? It takes you away from your higher purpose. It takes you away from what's most important in your life. And while you might get pleasure in the short term, you give up that sense of dignity within yourself that says you're doing the right thing. That's what causes more people to fail in life than I think almost anything else. Because the ultimate pleasure in life requires sometimes short-term pain to get to it. And that ultimate pleasure is who you become, what you contribute, and the experience of life that you have because of that growth and contribution. The sixth reason why most people fail the game called life is because in order to win this game, you got to work with 5.5 billion other people who all have the wrong rules. They don't know the purpose of the game either, and they are real clear that there are certain rules you must live by. See, one of the very important things we need to realize is that every moment you're creating the meaning of your life by the words you choose to use. If someone says something to you and you decide that the communication they gave you is inaccurate, you now have to decide, why is it inaccurate? If you decide the person was mistaken, that's one thing. If you decide they are wrong, that's another thing. If you decide that they're lying to you, that's another thing. Just by changing the word you attach to the experience, you completely change the meaning and the quality of interaction you're going to have with that person, how you're going to think, how you're going to feel, and how you're going to live. After something happens to you, whether you call that a loss or whether you call that learning, that's going to determine how you feel. It's going to determine what you do. So you've got to be very careful about the words you attach to your experience, because that's where the meaning starts. And the first place you got to look at that people screw up on is they look around at other people and say, I got to work with these people and they're screwed up because they have the wrong rules. We all have different rules because we've all learned different ways of getting out of pain and into pleasure in life. We got to learn from one another. And finally, the seventh reason why most people fail the game called life is because they think it's a life and death game. And you say, well, it is a life and death game. Well, I'm the first person to agree that this is not a practice session. This is the real thing. That's why we got to live it full on. But if you think everything is life and death every moment, you put so much pressure on yourself that you truly will not live life. You'll live in fear. And that's no life at all.